Good day. My name is Dr. Dion George, and I'm the South African Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. Since becoming the Minister in July 2024, I've immersed myself in understanding the complexities and interconnectedness of the vast portfolio of issues that we are mandated to resolve. Within this continuous process of learning and unlearning, I have firmly identified my big 6 strategic priorities, while also looking into how we can make the most sustainable impact. Engagement and communication are a key pillar to drive and support our strategic priorities. As such, I'm introducing my new YouTube environment series called The Minister's Couch. Here, I have important conversations with key local and international figures, focusing on environmental management, conservation and protection, with a view to elevate the most pressing environmental issues of our time. Welcome to the Minister's Couch.
On the continent of Africa that will take place in November. Can you tell us the work you're doing leading up to the summit in November and what you hope to achieve this year?
Well, thank you very much. And firstly, thank you for all the assistance you're giving us, because we're very grateful, because we need all the help that we can get. As we saw, we have a massive problem with the poaching. It's not only rhino, it's also pangolin, it's plants. So we have got a huge issue on our hands, but we are making enormously good progress. And the first place that you make progress in is political will, for example. So what has changed in South Africa is that we have prioritized illicit wildlife trafficking as one of the national priorities. Another thing that we've changed is we've also made that priority this department's priority. Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, so that the people who work in this department can keep it front of mind, because our police are very busy with many things. So we've set that up right from the beginning. So we've set out our objective. We want to fight this problem, and we can actually do that. And as you can see, we are making progress. The huge thing that we want to achieve from now until October is that we want this issue to be on the front line of people's minds, because it hasn't been there. And that's what we are doing. And I'm amazed also and delighted to see that we've made very good progress in the small time that we've been here this week, is because we are talking about that. Biodiversity and conservation is a big piece. Yes, there's climate and there's many other issues that need to be focused on, but this is big, because this is not only for South Africa, this is for the whole world. And if we're not successful here, then we let everybody down. And so everybody sitting here today is part of that solution, because we can't do it on our own. And so it is very clear that our good friends must help us. And we are talking to all of them. So it's the political will, it's the pressure we've started already, and we're talking to the recipient countries, etc. So we are relentless in that, but it's collaborative. Because the crux of the problem is that you've got hands and you've got heads. The hands, as mentioned by Cathy earlier, you can catch 1,000 people, and there will be 1,000 more, because the economy is not growing, and we need to make sure that people are integrated into the system. That's what is needed as a fundamental thing. And then, of course, the heads, that's the international criminal syndicates that are operating here and driving this problem. So we are tackling both of them. So Cathy on the front line, she's focusing on the thousands that never stop. And then, of course, I am focusing very heavily on how can we tackle that international problem.
It's so great to have you in the position and the government doing this, and so amazing to have the G20 here this week at Kruger National Park. What better place to have this conversation? And so important, we at United for Wildlife have strived to bring other countries into this dialogue, and to understand the transnational organized crime behind it that you just spoke about, the need for cross-border cooperation to go after it. We come back to South Africa itself domestically. You've spoken about collaboration. We stand for partnership. Are there any partnerships in particular, or how you're approaching partnerships in South Africa that you can share with us that is showing good signs of success?
Well, we have the all of society approach because government cannot do it on its own. So we know that, I mean, obviously you have to make sure the rules are in place, etc. But what you need to do is collaborate specifically with the conservation organizations, the private sector, the SAMLIT, as you mentioned, because it's a system. And what we need to do is we need to break that system. And how do you break a system is you identify the area that you can punch a hole in, and then you punch the hole in it, and then you start to change it. So we see this, the partnerships are crucial. We cannot do it on our own. Mm-hmm. We know government, well, some people think it's really relatively fragile, but nonetheless, there we go. We work with what we have. And what we have in South Africa are enormously good conservation partners. We've got business. We have got a government that is getting stronger in this particular area. And of course, it's the international collaboration, because it's not going to work any other way. So what we want to do is work on the demand as well, which we're doing. So it's a system that we're trying to build, a good and virtuous system. And that's why the G20 matters so much, is because all the nations, the strongest financial nations in the world, are actually here, with the exception of one, which we won't talk about at the moment. But the fact of the matter is that there is enough muscle for us to do what is needed to be done. And that's the crucial thing. So that's our message to the whole world. Give us the assistance we need, because you know that it will not be wasted. You know that if you assist us, we will get somewhere. And that's the crucial thing, I believe.
Fantastic. Cathy, first of all, thank you for sharing your insights in the film. We are so proud to have you here. What can you tell us about the state of rangering today and how rangers are doing, and what a typical day, what they're confronting? What can you share from the front lines and from July 2025?
Thanks very much, David, and thank you, Minister, and thank you for this opportunity. I think for rangers, we thrive that nothing is typical, and every day is incredibly unpredictable. But I think to be a ranger in 2025 is very different to what it was 10 years ago. I think the threats and the challenges that rangers face are very difficult, and so we find that it takes a different type of person to be able to actually work and to successfully be able to deal with all the current challenges. So I think our typical idea of a ranger is we always wanted somebody that was physically strong. If you can do 50 push-ups and pull-ups and run with 20 kgs on your back, well, that was it. But we've actually found in SANParks that we need to find people that are actually mentally prepared and mentally resilient. And we've done a lot of work in the last few years in terms of looking at how we actually select people, and select people with the core attributes. So we're not only looking for the physicality, but you're looking for people that can deal with all of these challenges. And I think the challenges range. We obviously focus a lot on the rhino poaching, but we've seen an escalation in the poisoning, which is a really big concern to us, the escalation in lion poisoning, bushmeat poaching. So, you know, we are all conservationists at heart, and at the root of it all, we want to fulfill our conservation mandate, so we never stray far from that. But in addition, we have this massive additional responsibility of law enforcement, which has brought in a lot of different challenges. So I don't think there's any routine day in Kruger. Rangers are up from very first light. I heard somebody say it's really cold. When people say that, I think of those rangers that are on their 10-day clandestine deployments. They're out there in tents for 10 days. They can't make fires to keep them warm. Fires give away their position. They can't make fires to even cook. So they really have to be there as quietly and as possible, because there are extra eyes and ears. So besides the hundreds of rangers that are sleeping now in the bush in Kruger, the ones that are going to wake up at first light to patrol, never really knowing what the day is going to bring, always having conservation at heart. So we looking at monitoring everything around us, but also ready for when that routine patrol picks up a track. We need a dog, we need a helicopter, we need all the support, not really knowing whether that track is going to go till we run out of light, till we unfortunately get a contact, or till something else happens. So I think the biggest challenge is preparing people for what it actually means to be a modern day ranger.
That's daunting, incredible, but also inspiring, and it's why United for Wildlife, we've tried to focus on the role of rangers, the work that you do. We saw in the film a partner of yours, which has a very different responsibility, Care for Wild, and it was quite inspiring to see what they're doing. Can you tell us a bit more about that partnership, how it came to be, how it's working between Kruger and Care for Wild?
Yeah, so Kruger has a very special and strategic partnership with Care for Wild, and I think one of the unintended consequences of poaching is that you suddenly have all these orphans. And so a long time ago there was this vision that with this orphan something needed to be done. Obviously in Kruger you in the forefront when the poaching was really at its highest, when over 800 rhino were lost a year. That's where the focus had to be. And so finding a really good strategic partnership and a person like Petronel who had that passion and that vision of not only taking these orphans and trying to rehabilitate them, it's actually quite scary to see how much trauma a small rhino calf holds within it, and how they have to process and deal with that, but also having the vision that one day these rhinos will be released and free. And so it's been a really special partnership because out of all the poaching and the horror that you see, there's an orphan, and so there's hope in the role that we can play in rescuing, recovering that orphans, having that partnership where someone can take over, but always staying connected. And I think that when times are really tough, that little glimmer of hopes in seeing how happy Riri is. And that as tragic as that day was, and the contact and the rhino that was lost, there's hope. And there's orphans or calves being born from orphans that come from Kruger. And so I think those strategic partnerships are just so incredibly important. As the Minister said, certainly in Kruger, we're not able to do this on our own, and we rely heavily on those partnerships.
That's fantastic. And I know when Petronel has come to Kruger or to the other reserves where they rescue orphan rhinos from, telling the stories of how those rhinos have grown and where they are, and then the rangers in these reserves remembering those rhinos and having that connection and that second chance. That's beautiful. And Petronel was supposed to be here tonight. We were going to have 3 people in this conversation with me, but she's actually on an important fundraising journey that she had to leave today for. So we thank her for her great work and the work of her colleagues. Minister, back to you if I could, and the threats of poaching, and getting more specific about that and what South Africa's response is. Rhinos, pangolin, I know you feel very strongly and are focused on abalone as well. What are the ways that you're looking at it from your position, from your department's position, and the approach to anti-poaching?
Well, right at the outset when I became the minister, I thought, well, I'm probably the most unlikely environment minister because I was in finance and I was in opposition for a very long time. So I did have the privilege of having a 2-week ranger course. I just had a little taste of what it was like. And when Cathy says it's hard, I mean, she is really understating it. It is incredibly hard because the people are out there all the time and they have to be vigilant and they're shot at, and it's really an intent to kill them. So it is a really, really, really difficult job, but it does get done. So as the minister, I'm very mindful of the fact that we must make sure that we support our rangers as much as possible, to make sure that when they're out in the field, that they have the proper equipment, for example. Of course, that requires money, so we want to make sure that it needs to be put in the right place. Also, very specifically, as you mentioned, we've got a number of problems in terms of the different types of poaching that we have. But the common denominator is the international criminal syndicates. That's what's happening. The United States has the total waba fish that we spoke about at some point. It's the same thing, and the currency is drugs, and it's also about human trafficking, etc. It is all related. And so we're very mindful of that. So the first thing is to know that you've got that international problem because you need to tackle it. And then the government needs to be very robust about that. And we haven't been robust enough about it. As I said before, I have been speaking directly to recipient countries because we do want to have an agreement, an international agreement, where we not only talk about it, but actually act. Because there's been lots of talking, but not a lot of action. So that's the very important thing. But crucially also, modern technology is here with us. We need to focus on artificial intelligence. We need to look at drone technology. We need to know what's going on. We don't know entirely what is going on. We have a fusion center that collects amazing amount of data, but of course we lost a bit of funding recently on that. So that harms our ability to do things. So from a resource perspective, government is absolutely animated about the fact we need to put as much as we possibly can within the limited resources we have, because we've got poverty in this country, we have starvation in this country. So that is an overarching thing. But then on the ground, we need and we are working with communities so that the communities can become part of the solution, because that ultimately is the solution. So if people grow up near the parks or near the natural assets we have, learn to love them and know that they own a piece of this, it's their asset, then they will interrupt and not fall for people to come and say, I'm going to give you a little bit of money and then you're going to come and harm the assets. So it's a societal thing that we have to do. So we have to punch really hard on the front line, that we do the best we can, but also at the same time fix that system, because it's been going on for decades, probably hundreds of years. If you look at the abalone, for example, we have communities in South Africa that are deeply invested in the poaching environment because that's all they have. And so how do you actually extract people out of that? You can remove 1,000 people on the front line and more will come. So that's why we need to do that. And when we have the G20 meeting in Cape Town, you will be very close to Robben Island. And that is one of the epicenters that we have of the problem with abalone poaching on. Hout Bay around the corner, that's where the poachers come from. We know this, and it is difficult to actually disrupt that. So we need to up that game, and we are, but you have to be sensible, because you can't run in like some kind of a cowboy, because it's not going to make any difference at all. It's to understand the system and then to go and disrupt it. We've already done that, because we've been able to do quite a lot of good work on the abalone poaching. So we're finding that it's actually starting to change the behavior of people. So that's the way we like to see things, is it's all a system, and also it's all about the money. And if you can do that disruption, then you make work like Cathy's work a lot easier. Also, we know our neighborhood is a bit unstable, so when Mozambique had its problem, we saw an uptick in poaching. So it's important that the region is stable also. But I am talking to my Mozambican counterpart about that, because it's not okay, of course, and so we need to agree something there. So it's a holistic approach, and also punching hard on the front line.
Amazing. And so returning to the G20 and thinking about multinational efforts, I mentioned the insurance program Prince William announced in Cape Town. The year before in Singapore, he announced a cross-border statement of principles that sounds like something that you're picking up on and bringing to the G20 and hoping to bring across to many countries. And we saw a great example of the largest ever seizure of rhino horn in Singapore that came from South Africa, and with cooperation between your two countries and lots of sharing of information, really successful investigations and prosecutions. What is the message from that work, from the work you're seeing, to the G20? What would you like to see coming out of this G20 presidency toward the enforcement efforts?
Well, as a non-aligned country, we are actually in a very fortunate position, because we can talk to everybody and we have friends everywhere. And that's a very good place for us to start. So if we look, for example, at the big powers in the world, for example, we look at China, for example, we've been having really constructive discussions about, let's agree, let's act, and let's write it down more strongly. Same with the United States, that in fact the United States is still interested in combating illicit wildlife trafficking. So we believe that it's possible to bring people together in terms of that. It is not a controversial thing. But who wants to have poaching? Who wants to have these creatures illicitly trafficked? Nobody does. So if the articulation is, well, we all don't want this, Well, that's fine. Well, then let's agree to say something strong about it and then do something. So this G20, one of my ambitions, big ambitions we've got here in South Africa, we're a very ambitious country because we should be, because we're one of the most mega diverse on earth, so why not be? So one of the things we want to see coming out of the G20 is at least the start of that agreement. If we can't get it far enough, that's fine, but what we'd like to do is to at least have it on front of mind because it hasn't been pushed hard. And it is something that needs to be done, especially a country like South Africa, where we are megadiverse, our population is megadiverse, we understand change, we understand transition, we understand difficulty, we understand noise. And so within all of this noise, let's just be focused. Okay, let's agree, we don't want to have this. Now, how do we actually do this? So let's agree it, and then the steps that we need to take. So I am absolutely convinced that in the ministerial declaration that we have in October, that we are going to have something meaningful on this. And it doesn't mean that we want to force people to do something they don't want to do. The fact of the matter is the world is evolving, and the young generation, you will see, they will be much more animated about what is happening to the world around them. So I feel absolutely excited about the possibilities, and we will continue going on that vein. We will see over the future, in the next number of years, how it will gather momentum.
We share that objective, and you have our full support and belief that this can happen during this year, and needs to happen during this year. Cathy, we've heard a little bit about the increase in poaching in the last 6-9 months. We heard it in the film. The minister just spoke about it. What can you tell us about the response to the increase in poaching, and how you look ahead to the rest of the year?
Yeah, so in December we did see a sudden escalation, and we didn't really understand. We had 2 years of relatively low poaching, so we were caught a little bit off guard. But I think when we talk about the power of partnerships, with the support of our executive and everybody, we reached out to partners, and one of them was United for Wildlife and SAMLIT, and very quickly, as we all do, we started a WhatsApp group with the DFFE, with the Fusion Center, trying to understand what was happening and what was driving it. And that relationship still holds today, and we've really learned a lot, and some of it has guided what we've been able to do. And so there's been a lot of investment, again, in the actual ranges, but in innovative technology, in different solutions, in thinking a little bit outside of the box, in amping up our efforts. We were a little bit in a comfort zone, and so it's taken us a while to find our feet, but luckily with the support that we've received from everybody and from our own executive and board, we've been able to slowly turn the tide. So we certainly are not out of danger, but I think we have a better understanding of what drove the renewed interest in rhino. We certainly saw that in December, January, February, Kruger was the focus of all the rhino poaching. It was Christmas Day, we were dealing with rhinos and flying orphans. New Year's Day, it was the same. And so it was really, really great to build those trust relationships for partners from all over, whether it be the Walk, SAMLIT, United for Wildlife, the Fusion Center, everybody coming together and saying, okay, this is certainly not a Kruger problem. This is not only a national problem or a South African problem. This is a bigger problem. Let us all put our heads together. And so I think, again, what comes out strongly is that power of really good partnerships, building trusted relationships with people who are willing to share, and the common understanding that this is a problem we're all facing, and not only related to rhino, related to all types of organized crime. And so, yeah, we would certainly like to think that there's a lot of renewed effort going in, lots of new innovative effort going in, and we certainly will, as the Minister said, we take what we do incredibly serious. We take the responsibility that we've been given as an awesome responsibility, but it's a great responsibility. And so we certainly will continue to try and do our absolute best to curb the poaching.
Incredible. So in the last minute here, before we welcome everyone to enjoy their dinner, can I ask you both the same question on behalf of the assembled group here? How can we help? How can we all help? Ask Minister first.
I think that the way that you can help is to get the narrative into the process effectively, so that when we have the declaration, that we have the narrative that we can work on. I think that's extremely important, because that is a demonstration of what is possible when the nations of the world work together. Because it isn't only this group, because what I want to then take, I want to take that, and then I want to be engaging with all the others as well, because there's many nations in the world, as we know. So that's how you can help. Because, I mean, I'm sure you've all seen the Star Wars movies, and then you've got this princess, and she's on the transponder, and she says, "We need your help. We need your help." And that is so, we do. And we saw today the Rhino. We're having to cut the horn off to save it, right? What does success look like? Is that when a rhino can walk through the bush with a horn on its head. And you can all help us to do that. That's the powerful thing that can happen over here.
Thank you, Minister. Cathy, how can we help?
Oh, so that's a really thoughtful and a powerful question. I think specifically when you think of us being in a place like Kruger, that's so ecologically and culturally diverse and important. I think the launch of the Rhino Renaissance campaign today is a major step, because it's a campaign that's not looking only at empowering rangers and ensuring that they have what they need to do on the ground and that they're protected, but also working with our local communities and making sure that they are conservation stewards and not just bystanders in what we're trying to do. So I really think I get a massive amount of hope from seeing this incredible initiative being launched, seeing this collaborative effort again from government, from private sector, from NGOs, everybody coming together and saying that we really want to have a growing and a thriving rhino population. And in order to do that, we need to look after the people, work really closely with our communities, and really lean towards innovative technology and different ways of doing things.
Thank you both for your comments today, for sharing that with us, and more importantly, for being such great guardians of the planet. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you all.